And now I have the great honor and pleasure to introduce Pacific Symphony's next artistic and music director. Please welcome to the stage Alexander Shelley.
Hi, Mary. How are you? Thank you. This is very kind. Thank you. Hi, guys. Hi.
Welcome to your world.
Wow. So many kind words, so many beautiful words. Thank you for this introduction. I was listening backstage. What an honor and what a privilege. Thank you.
I'm so excited that we get a chance to get to know you a little bit personally.
Yes.
You are a musician. You are the child of musicians, wonderful pianists, as well as the grandchild of a musician. You yourself decided to pick up the cello and have a life in music. How did all of that come into being? Where did all of that spark of inspiration
Well,
come
and for those of you, we had a lovely dinner last night with the board. So for those of you who are there, apologies. I'll repeat a couple of the anecdotes from last night. But I think now looking back, a pretty unusual childhood. In the home I grew up in, there were 5 grand pianos, 3 concert grand pianos, 12 foot long, and then 2 just regular grand pianos. They were spread around the house because my father was a concert pianist. My mother, my father is a concert pianist. My mother was a concert pianist. She passed away a couple of years ago. She would have loved being here this evening, gosh. Or she would have been watching the live stream back from London. And so they needed a piano each to be able to practice separately, but they also, particularly when I was a child, played a great deal as 2 piano soloists in recital, but also with orchestra. So they needed in a room with 2 pianos in them as well. And then my grandmother, who lived in the house at the bottom, she was a pianist and a cellist, so she had her piano. And so lying there as a little boy in bed, going to sleep, I'd have sounds coming from left, right, north, south, east, west of pianos playing. And what I realized is that music is a language. And in fact, it's probably, along with visual arts, which is very different, but it is a language which transcends time and culture. So that something written 300 years ago in a continent far, far away could speak to the deepest parts of each of us in a manner that is utterly intelligible. We could define absolutely what a composer is trying to transmit to us, whether it's pure joy at the end of the Ninth Symphony of Beethoven, whether it's utter desolation in one of Shostakovich's war symphonies. We can sit in a room like this and we can share in experiences the deepest, most profound, most joyous, most meaningful moments in human history through these messages in bottles that are being sent. They're non-lingual, but they speak to that deepest part of us that needs stories, that needs narratives, that needs something to connect the fabric of our world. I didn't think all those things when I was 3. But maybe there was a seed that was set there. So yes, I grew up in this house full of music, and I heard my parents communicating with one another through music. When you, as a 3- and 4-year-old, see your parents sitting at 2 grand pianos, playing music, listening, responding, you realize what's happening. You feel it deep inside you. So then I didn't think twice about my upbringing. But of course I realize now, well, what an extraordinary environment it was to grow up in. And honestly, I don't know why I'm not better at what I do, because there's so many people who grew up without music in their lives. I work with so many wonderful soloists, and I know so many great conductors and great orchestral musicians. You get into conversation, you find out that they came to music when they were 7 or 8 because of a piece of life at school. They had a great teacher who was passionate. And they're extraordinary. I had this kind of head start, if you will, but I'm very grateful for it.
Well, you'll have that opportunity to inspire the young people here in Orange County when
absolutely.
you come. So you played the cello.
Yes, that's right.
you traded in the bow for the baton.
Correct.
How was that transition?
Well, it was a seamless transition, just like this one. I played the piano from when I was very small. There are quite cute pictures of me in diapers at a piano. And my grandmother was a cellist as well, and she had a cello that sat under her piano when she wasn't using it, and I used to point at it and say I wanted to play it. So there's cute pictures of me, not in diapers anymore, but in shorts with a big cello looking that big, you know, because it was a... And that became then my main instrument, and I went to school in London, and then I went to the Royal College of Music for a year from 17 to 18, and then when I was 18 I went to Germany, and I lived in Germany then for the best part of 20 years because I studied first of all cello, and while I was doing my master's degree I studied conducting, but from the moment I got to Germany I founded a chamber orchestra. Which was called the Schumann Kamerate, because it was in Düsseldorf that I studied. And Düsseldorf has a Schiller house, and it has a Schumann connection. And when you live there, you think, oh, Schumann must have spent most of his life here because everything is named after him. In fact, it was only a couple of years, and he absolutely hated the city. But in a great bit of marketing, they turned that one round, and everything's there. So we went to the Robert Schumann Music College there, and so we called it the Schumann Kamerate. And the point being that from, I think, my mid-teens when I was at high school, I asked to conduct the school orchestra, and they let me do it. And then I had caught the bug. And my father, he gave me wise advice. He said, look, if you want to become a conductor, the most important thing is to actually conduct. It's, yes, of course, studying it and learning it, but you need to be in front of ensembles. You need to be learning how to communicate. And something that I think, again, looking back, was very helpful is that the Schumann Kamerate that I founded when I was 18, 19, it was made up of friends, colleagues who were studying with me. And the only means I had to persuade them to play with me was by working with them in a manner that felt inclusive and felt like we were really doing something together as a team, because I couldn't pay them. And we couldn't pay each other. And it was only after we'd really molded something together that we were able to then build a little business, because then we started to do our own concerts. We put on our own cycles of concerts for people of our age. We were very passionate about that. We did 5 years of concerts called 440 Hertz, which brought together all the different genres of arts that we loved on stage. We were in a beautiful 900-seater hall called the Schumannsaal in Düsseldorf, and we would do some concerts that had kind of regular seating, other concerts we'd take all the seats out, people would just stand if we had DJs with us, and we did these sorts of things. And I also, from when I was a kid, I've loved playing jazz and pop keyboards, and I had a cover band at the time, and it was made up of members of the orchestra. So we'd be on stage performing. We'd start the concerts at 9. Sometimes they were 2.5 hours long. It was just sometimes they were shorter, but it didn't really matter. We just kept going and did the music, and then afterwards we'd go front of house and we'd throw a party. And a lot of us who'd been on stage, 5, 6 of us in the band, would then be sitting at instruments, and we'd have, you know, a party afterwards. So that was the sort of transition. I was still playing the cello, and sometimes I'd play a concerto with this orchestra, you know, Haydn concerto or Gulda's cello concerto. I used to play with them, which is this very cool sort of semi-jazz cello thing. But then in 2005, when I was 25 or 24, in fact, when it happened, no, I was 25. Apologies. My mother said, "You must take part in the Leeds Conductors Competition." And I said, I have no experience with professional orchestras at all, and there's going to be all these great young conductors who are far better than I am, and why would I do that? But as mothers are, she said, oh, you must, and I think you can win this. I thought it was hubristic but lovely. So I sent in a video. And as I mentioned last night, I think maybe precisely because I was pretty relaxed about the experience. I didn't think I had any great chances, but I prepared very, very thoroughly, and I was accepted as one of the 25 finalists, which meant that we all traveled to Leeds. And then there were, I think, 4 or 5 rounds, and it began with relatively small ensemble stuff with the wonderful Orchestra of Opera North in Leeds. And each day I would wake up just filled with excitement that I'd get to perform wonderful music and rehearse wonderful music with a professional orchestra. So I kind of went in with a smile on my face, and of course, because of what had then been 6, 7 years of working very regularly with my own ensemble, the act of rehearsing was sort of second nature to me. And so I think those two things, the lack of expectation, the relaxation I was able to bring to bear because I was just happy to be there, and then maybe a degree of fluency at rehearsal that I had developed because of the ensemble that I started, meant that I kept on progressing from round to round, and I was going, I can't believe this. Now I get to do a Beethoven symphony, now I get to do a Tchaikovsky symphony, now I get to do the new piece that was commissioned by, for the competition. And then we got to the finals, and there were 3 pieces up for grabs: the Pictures at an Exhibition, Shostakovich Ninth Symphony, and Death and Transfiguration by Strauss, all pieces I love. And again, as I mentioned last night, I did something very un-English when they said, if you can decide what piece you'd like, then we don't need to tell you what pieces you're going to do. You don't have to draw straws. And I immediately said, I want the Strauss. And because the others were very polite, they said, oh, sure, you take that. And then they took other pieces. But that piece, which means so much to me, and of the 3, I think goes emotionally deepest. The others are superb pieces, but they have different stories to tell. Death and Transfiguration goes to the very deepest essence of one of the most important questions that any of us ask ourselves. What is life and what is death, and what is the relationship between the two? And that power, which is the power of music, carried me in that final. And then I ended up winning the competition, and that kicked off then my career. So that was.
And you were the youngest to have won that competition.
I was, apparently, yes.
Yeah, we're 25 years old, standing in front of this with this piece of music.
Well, and then it's a very strange life, because in fact the competition never ends. You come out as the winner of the competition, and then the director of the Philharmonia Orchestra was there, the director of the BBC Philharmonic Orchestra was there, the director of a whole bunch of great English orchestras, agents were there. And 6 months later, I was with the Philharmonia Orchestra, one of the great orchestras of Europe. And in very typical English style, we were at a festival, and we had 1 3-hour rehearsal to do Smetana's Bartered Bride, Overture, Dvorak Cello Concerto, and Rimsky-Korsakov Scheherazade. Nowadays, no problem. I'd never done any of them. And this is the Philharmonia Orchestra, so I'm just trying not to burn my bridges when I'm there. But
I can imagine the musicians just looking at you.
Who is this guy and what's he going to do? So, the competition win is an unbelievable springboard.
Sure.
But you then have to redouble your efforts to, on the one hand, dive as deeply as you possibly can into every score that you're bringing in front of an orchestra, in the knowledge that you haven't done many of them before, most of them before. So what can you bring to the table? All you can bring to the table is being rigorous in your preparation, and very true to what the intentions of the piece are as you see it. And then open and try and relax. But it's hard, as you can imagine, if you're standing in front of 100 experts who've seen everything before. And so the next 10 years are a baptism of fire. But they're a wonderful baptism of fire, because you're working with extraordinary people, and you're performing extraordinary art for extraordinary people who've come to share an experience. I mean, what a job.
Well, you've had a remarkable life to this point, and this is not a baptism of fire. This is a warm and loving welcome.
Yeah.
But you had the good fortune of conducting the magnificent Pacific Symphony a couple times last season. When you came into this beautiful hall with these incredible acoustics, and you stood in front of the wonderful Pacific Symphony, what was your first response? What was your first
Well, I think I had
feeling?
2 first responses. The first time I came to the orchestra was with a lovely program. We did some Handel, we did Debussy's La Mer, we did Dvorak Cello Concerto with Elisa Weilerstein, and that was my first impression. And I remember the flexibility of the orchestra, the beauty of the sound in here, how wonderful Elisa was, and what a pleasure the program was. La Mer, which is a very delicate and transparent piece, was performed with wonderful clarity and virtuosity from the orchestra, and I went away with very happy memories of that first visit. And then the second visit was not that long ago, and I had very similar reactions. My dear friend David Frey was a pianist with whom my dear wife and I have had so much fun before. We toured France with David and his wife, and they're dear friends of ours. And so, being on stage with soloists that you not only admire but you love, they're friends, is already a wonderful thing. But the orchestra, in the first rehearsal, I indicated a certain change in sound that I was looking for, because as you all know, a great orchestra like this can play all the notes. That's never an issue. the question is how does the resonance work in a hall? What color are we looking for? Is it a white wine sound? Is it a red wine sound? Is it an autumnal palette? Is it a spring palette? And you can think of analogy after analogy. But if you listen to a rehearsal with a conductor, what you should hear are changes in the sound of an orchestra. You should be hearing, it's not about getting things together, because that should just happen. And of course there are moments. But really you're there to, if you will, change the degree of clarity in sound. Sometimes you want to wash the sound so it becomes more opaque and blended. Sometimes you want to clarify all the lines so suddenly you can hear every distinct voice. Sometimes you want to change that color so the sound feels very deep and round in a hall. Sometimes you want to brighten it up so it feels more brittle. This auditorium offers the opportunity to do all of that. And the skill and openness of the musicians also offers that. And that is the job of an artistic and music director when it comes to working with the ensemble, is to, if you will, set the parameters of a particular sound and say, or make sure that the ensemble hears what that resonance is, hear what that color is, hear what that sound is. And if you will, press Control S, save it. So that is, and I sometimes say that to orchestra, I say Control S. So that once you get a particular color, a particular dynamic, again, the range that you can produce in this auditorium is astonishing. And I'll show you what I mean. So right now, you're listening to my voice that is amplified through this. But as I start to speak less loudly, it's not just my voice that is becoming less strong. The intentionality of your listening is changing. So it's the same with gestures. If I conduct like this, you're going to get a certain energy from an orchestra. If I conduct, you start to listen to the silence and the space, right? These are the levers that as a conductor you have to pull. So quite often the first thing that, if an orchestra is playing more strongly than you anticipate at a certain moment, this and this is not necessarily necessary. The thing is then to reduce your movement so that out of peripheral vision, musicians who've just been playing along because they see a beat and they suddenly don't see the beat anymore, so they reduce their activity and they lift their heads and they see your activity drop and their activity drops and they start to look around to one another, and suddenly the sound in the auditorium completely changes. Control S. And then so on and so forth. But this is the bread and butter of being a conductor, is understanding how to sort of govern the rhythm, the sounds in a space. But the reason I say Control S is that the work of an artistic and music director is to build that palette so that when you're not there, it is immediately offered up to every guest that comes through. And the more of these pictures you can save, and the more you define them, and the more as an organization, as in the musicians, there is an awareness that is also the process of rehearsal. It's not a one-off.
Sure.
It's saying we create a picture and then we save it for the future. The more rapidly the sort of sonic spectrum of an orchestra evolves.
As you can see, he loves to teach about the world of music and conducting, and you have done that quite often in areas
that was
online.
A beautiful segue, bravo.
that you can learn so much more about music and conducting. You have done a lot of videos, you did a lot through the pandemic. I'm sure that you're planning on continuing that sort of thing, but what are your hopes and dreams and expansion for bringing more people into the world of the Pacific Symphony here in Orange County when you join us?
So I think one of the reasons that I love telling these kinds of stories about different things is that there is a sort of mystique a little bit around what we do. And I'm pretty sure that the last 5 minutes, the things I said, that next time you come to a concert hall, if you listen to a rehearsal, there are things that you might remember. And you might then notice certain things. You might notice the way that a piano is played, and you might say, I remember Shelley talking about that. It didn't sound that soft. It seemed like there was a lot of energy on stage. And so on and so forth. You know, there may be things that I can point out about how I think about an orchestra, how I think about a piece, that builds the image around an event or a particular piece. So, you know, if it's Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, to mention that piece again, I couldn't possibly conduct that without understanding enlightenment, without understanding, or to a degree at least, that it's possible to understand enlightenment, but at least to have dug into it, to have a sense of what it was that Beethoven was reacting to, why he chose that strange poem that used to be sung in drinking houses by fraternities. Why that of all poems? And these are questions that are actually really important.
Sure.
And if before a show you can have a little bit of time to talk about it, and realize that the O Freude, or the O Freunde, the first thing that's sung there, is actually nothing to do with the poem. It was Beethoven who wrote those words. It's literally him saying, "Hello, friends. This is no good what we're playing right now. We need to find something else in the music." That's literally the first thing that is sung in the last movement of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. He says, "No, not this." And if you remember, then he tries a little bit of the first movement. The music comes back, and he again says, not right. And then the second movement, no, that's not it. Third movement, that's not it. But in fact, he doesn't say that. What he does is he writes it in the double basses. I didn't know until I studied the piece properly that when he sketched that, he wrote words above it. He wrote the words, "This is not the right theme. No, that one's too sad. No, this one is too uplifting, and that's not what we're looking for." And then he rubbed them out. And he just left it to the double basis. I mean, wonderful example of abstraction, of reducing down to its essence an idea, leaving space for us to figure out what was meant in between it. And then, "Oh yes, this is it. Now we have found it." That's what he wrote above it. I don't know if you knew that. Did you know that? Probably some of you did. But that's just a little tidbit of information. But next time you listen to that, you're going to go, I think you're going to do that, because I do that. So if I need a piece of information like that to get inside the music, I've studied, I know all the harmonies, I know all the melodies, I know how it's orchestrated, all of that stuff. But that doesn't actually give me the insight that can transform the experience. And so, I need to dig in.
Right.
And if I need to dig in, I want to share it with the audience. If I know that there's a key, something that can transform an experience from being simply beautiful or interesting to transformative or enlightening, then it's my obligation also to share that. So that's one way. Now, that broadly speaking, that's storytelling. Now, one of the reasons that I love working, again, across disciplines, bringing in visual arts, bringing in literature, bringing in dance, is that they're also ways of telling stories, they're entry points. And remember, the art form of symphonic music has always been connected to other disciplines. Right. Mozart, a meta-genius of all meta-geniuses, his greatest output was multidisciplinary, opera. His greatest works were when he was put into dialogue with a librettist, with a set designer, with a group of singers, with a chorus. His genius became further unbounded. The great works of the earlier 20th century, what are they? Sacre du Printemps, Firebird, La Valse, Bolero. They're all ballets, because the composers were put into dialogue with other art forms. And the list continues. Wow. But I believe very much in that, because there are people then who love dance. They're not sure about symphonic music. Let's grab them.
Okay.
There's people who love the visual arts and don't know about symphonic music. Let's grab them. Let's work together. Let's tell stories.
Choral music.
Choral music. Oh, don't start me on choral music. You can see Rob there. It's the cherry on this particular cake that you have one of the great choruses of the world here, one of the great choruses in North America, and it's been such a pleasure getting to know Rob a little bit over the last year. I so look forward to the future. Yeah.
So there will not be a test. However, I am assuming that there is moments in time in which you are not watching a score, deeply diving into a score or listening to something. What does Alexander and his beautiful wife and your two young sons like to do when they are not wrapped in the world of music?
Oh golly, well we love sports.
Good. You are in the perfect place.
Yeah, Zoe is many extraordinary things, and she's an extraordinary personal trainer and expert in fitness. And it doesn't work very well when we train together. She gets very angry at me. She says I can't listen and I don't follow her direction, which is probably true. But let's not go there today. That's in front of too many people.
So much more to learn about you.
But no, it's a very important part of life for me is staying active, and I find that my mental sort of acuity, sharpness, and well-being is very, very much connected to the physical side of things. I love running. I love doing what my wife tells me to do in the gym. And you know, our lives did change considerably 6 years ago. We had our first boy, Sasha, and we have a second boy, Leo, and they're the most beautiful little guys in the world. We love them so much. But that transforms life, of course. So where I used to come home from tour and I would sleep in because I was tired from traveling and performing, that doesn't happen. It's 6:30 a.m. They're in there with us, and then, but I wouldn't change it for the world. But yeah, so sort of physical activity. We have a new home that we got a couple of years ago in England, which we love very much and sort of invest our time in.
Lovely.
But yeah, there are lots of things that interest me, particularly reading around the things that also I'm learning. We joke a lot because Zoe reads an awful lot of great fiction, and I think because my job is so sort of about abstraction and things, I tend to read nonfiction a lot, and she always laughs at me, but I love particularly kind of behavioral psychology, again, maybe because of my job, just understanding how we tick and respond to the world around us.
Right. Well, we will welcome you soon as the director designate, and you will be working for the next season, sort of in tangent with Carl St.Clair, and we are looking forward to that, and I'm sure that you and Carl work together quite well.
I'm going to meet Carl tomorrow for lunch. It's my first meeting.
Oh, lovely.
And I cannot wait. Firstly, to shake his hand and congratulate him on what an extraordinary legacy. So I look forward to that greatly. And he can let me know where all the skeletons are in the comments.
Well, you and I will be having much more opportunities to chat, but at this moment in time, I do want to see if anyone has a question perhaps they would like to ask Alexander right off the bat, because I know that we're very excited that you're going to be here. Yes? Oh, there we go.
I'd love to know what your cover band was.
I knew as I mentioned that would be the. So this is, it's going to take a second. The cover. This was in Germany, and our cover band was called Anna, like A-N-N-A. And the reason it was called Anna is because it was an acronym for Altes Neu or Neues Alt, old in a new way and new in an old way. And what we would do, for example, we would take a Britney Spears song, but we would turn it into a swing cover. Or we took like the Candy Stick, which was a big song at the time. We turned that also into a swing cover. But then we would take Elvis songs and we'd sometimes cover them in the kind of more modern style. Although I have to say, an observation, we played a lot of parties and things like that. And we played music from the 60s, 50s through until what was then the noughties to 2005. We call them the noughties in England, sorry. And whenever we played Elvis, of all the music that we played, the dance floor filled up. Yeah, boom, boom, ba-dee-da, boom, boom, ba-dee-da, boom. Everybody, young, old, wherever they're from, they jumped onto the dance floor because there's something about Elvis. I don't know the songs that you wrote. Yeah. But we had great fun. And I just to finish the story, I had 2 keyboards, which made me very happy because we didn't have a bassist, which is interesting. We had a guitarist, we had 2 percussionists, we had a lead vocalist, and we had and then there was me. And so I'd play bass on one keyboard and then something else here. And the transformative moment of our artistic lives as a cover band was when we introduced. It was 3 backing vocal mics. So one of the percussionists, the guitarist, and I got a mic. And our lead singer, who was sensationally good, he also wrote great songs. He was a violinist by trade, and he's a concert master of one of Germany's very fine orchestras, and he still sings his own stuff. But he would be singing away, and I'd be playing my 2 keyboards, and sometimes I go, "Whoo." Yeah. And we do... And it would be in 3-part harmony with the others. It just made me so happy.
Well, I imagine there's going to be remarkable innovation when it comes to programming here at the Pacific Symphony coming up.
Exactly.
So very nice. I did, and it was about what you plan to do in what you were hoping and dreaming for the Pacific Symphony
wow.
in the next 5 years.
Wow.
And there are no limitations. There's no money limitation. There is no creativity limitation. This is the right place to do that. And no money, so there are no limitations. your dream for the Pacific Symphony.
So
in the 5 years?
there were a few things that were said earlier that I agree with. I think that the foundations that exist now, as an incoming artistic music director, you couldn't ask for more. The connection to the community is there, it's real, it's deep. The commitment to education, to the next generation of musicians, but also music lovers, is there. First of all, we need to redouble those efforts. We need to make sure that we become ever more integrated in the community. As I said yesterday, a symphony orchestra serves a community, but it's also built by a community. It's a symbiotic relationship. And what you have built here, I can say this now as somebody coming in, and it'll be different in a few years, we're on that journey together, but what you have built here is extraordinary, and it's a testament, as was mentioned earlier, to your commitment to the arts in your community. And as a guest right now, for another few moments, can I thank you? Because already as a guest artist coming through, it was evident. And it's something very special to see growth in the arts, at a time when arts around the world are not having the easiest time. That said, I am truly optimistic about the future of these kinds of experiences of being in a hall together. They're going to become more and more important because yes, we are individuals, and yes, there's much that we can do in isolation and in connection with an iPhone or another product. But also we are a species that needs togetherness and that has some of the most profound experiences, whether it's a sports stadium, #Olympics 2028, or whether it's a church, or whether it's a concert hall. We need these experiences, we need these shared experiences. In terms of, so I'm optimistic about the art form, very optimistic about the art form. I'd like for us to become even better known beyond the confines of the local community. I would like this orchestra to be celebrated across the continent and internationally, and I think it is wonderfully poised artistically to take that next step even further. I think there are levers we can pull there. I think that touring to key regions there will be a very important part of it. I'd love to put together a strategy for recording. I'd love to put together a strategy for collaborating with some of today's most interesting artists, both composers, but also beyond, looking to literature, looking to the visual arts, looking to dance. And it's of course not lost on me that we have our home at the heart of a truly great arts campus that can hold its head up to any other arts campus in the nation. And I look forward greatly to getting to know my colleagues in the artistic leadership of the other venues on the campus and to talking about how we can collaborate. It's one of the reasons it was important to me that my title is also Artistic and Music Director. It's something I've been doing for a decade in Canada at the National Arts Centre. We have a multidisciplinary organization there. And I've noticed that some of the greatest impact of our work has happened when we've brought disciplines together. But I'm very ambitious for the future of the orchestra, and I'm at a moment in my own life where, those early those 10 years I described of, everything is an extraordinary challenge, those are way beyond me. That I've had a few decade-long music directorships now, starting in Nuremberg when I was 29, and I feel very kind of strong and ready to help lift the organization and carry on lifting it. Carl has been doing the most extraordinary job. And the musicians are so committed, and there's a most wonderful leadership in place, and the board, as I get to know them, the fire in the eyes of this board is something truly to behold. But I'm I think a really great moment in my own life to push and to help kind of chart a course and a vision, and I'm ambitious, so watch this space. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.